Good morning. Hey, how you doing? You got Bruce, the Weather Soul, here on the Weather Soul podcast, brought to you by First Note Productions. Good morning. August 27th. It's a Saturday. Got my coffee. Hello. How you guys doing? What a week, huh? Jeez. I tell you what. This bomber thing, man. Something smells fishy. Something smells fishy to me, and I don't know where we're going to go with this. I just have some feelings that I've got to put forward in this MAGA bomber, if you want to call him that. That's fine with me. I don't care. I really don't care what the rhetoric is anymore. I just find it odd that that this guy that we're looking at and we're saying is the bomber, or that they brought him in, they caught him in his van, or wherever they caught him. I've been keeping kind of a loose key on it. I've been more towards looking at Facebook and the way people react on Facebook and social media than anything. And it's just surprising me that so many people have these preconceived conceptions of that group speak makes people act. And when group speak makes people act, we have a problem with the way that other things are perceived, like whether or not you have your own free will to do whatever you want to do and however you want to do it. I'm sorry, the president can sit up there and he can bang his fist and stamp his feet and yell to the top of his lungs that I should act upon other people that I don't like and punch them and hit them and bomb them and do whatever they want to do. But, unless I am totally a robot, I'm not going to do anything with it. And I just find it suspicious that that number one, none of these bombs went off. It hasn't really been, there's a lot of things that haven't been answered with this bomber. Number one, it hasn't said anything about whether these things were even able to explode. Well, they look pretty cheesy. I mean, it looks like something that I can strap my checkbook to my thing and put my cell phone up next to it, wire it all up, and then, oh my God, I got a bomb, and it's funny because they haven't said anything about what kind of explosives were in it. None of them detonated, thank God, and that they even were, what can I say? This guy didn't know what he was doing, and either he didn't know what he was doing or he knew what he was doing, and just things smell fishy. Listen, why would some guy that is so in tune with Trump, loves Trump, has a van full of freaking stickers that are all pro-Trump and pro-this and NRA and all this other crap that they've got, why would this guy turn around within 2 weeks of the midterm elections and do something like this? It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me. So was this guy completely stupid? Was there some other agenda that he was trying to? Kind of the Democrats would have put him up to this? I don't know. Really, it's so stupid. It's funny. And the same people with that follow me and I follow on Facebook. I'm sorry. We're just as stupid, right? We are. I put up a paintbrush yesterday, a big wide paintbrush, because a lot of people on Facebook just take this wide brush and say, oh, you see, anybody who supports Donald Trump and does this, they're capable of going out and doing this. Yeah, bullshit. I'm sorry. It's total bullshit. And I just really can't fathom that this guy had all the marbles that are in his head. Yeah, was he some kind of rock star during these so-called rallies that he went to? It's really surprising that we get so much from the media 24/7 with so much detail when it has to do with something that they're passionate about. But it seems pretty hush hush what this guy had done, or where's he from, or how's he do this, and I haven't listened to the news this morning because, frankly, I don't tune into Fox. I don't tune into CNN. I don't tune into MSNBC. I read more than I do, and you know, shamelessly, to tell you the truth, I read more on the Fox News site because it's kind of sensational National Enquirer stuff, and that's about all it is. It's a bunch of bullshit. CNN, they got a lackluster website, and so is MSNBC. I think MSNBC is right up there with Fox. I mean, at least they've got spectacular stuff going on the website, but it just seems strange, and it just seems weird that all these timings of all this stuff, the Honduran masses that are coming up here to challenge. I don't even think they're challenging anything. You know what? They're just a bunch of refugees coming up here to find a better life. And you know what? It's a shame that we're having these immigration problems right now. And I just think that the timing of all these things is very suspicious. They always are. It's always 11th hour stuff. It's always going on. But you know what? We can say that about anything. Just after the elections, there'll be some other timing issue that comes up, whether it be, with Congress reconvening, or SCOTUS reconvening, or some timeline is going to be suspiciously at the same time something else goes on. And it's all kind of the smoke screen that the news cycle puts up, the smoke screen that the politicians want to tell you that's what it is. And you know what? Like I said, with my Facebook friends, that's fine. You want to put up your crap, that's fine. I want to put up my crap, that's fine. A lot of times I laugh. I've definitely cut loose a couple of people that I won't even consider replying to their posts because they're so freaking ridiculous. And I think that some of you people are just so fucking dense. I'm sorry to be blunt about it. I told you I was going to be blunt on this podcast, and you know what? You guys are. Sorry. That's just the way, straight up. And I know you think the same about me. So hey, touche, and que sera, sera, right? So anyway, I quit Facebook. Well, kind of quit Facebook this week. And I just started having these messages come up in my new page, which was the Weather Soul podcast page. And this is where I eventually wanted to kind of aim my business towards at least posting my podcast during the week, at least these first 15 that I promised you. And I started posting some little posts here and there, and they have what they call boost. And when you have a page, not a group, but a page that you start on Facebook, it's almost like they automatically set you up with their marketing plan. And this marketing plan has a different terms of service that if you just signed on to Facebook, you sign up and you put in your password and stuff like that. If you want to read the terms of service, it's very wide and blunt and just tells you, you can't do this, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. Well, when you get into a page and you get into the business side, the terms of service are very, very pointed, and it's very, very important that a business owner or somebody that has an interest in making profit like I do, with a podcast or something like that, you really got to look forward, and you've got to understand that of course Facebook is trying to make money. I'm trying to make money. Everybody's trying to make money. But when you have a platform that says that they don't want to have certain types of language said, certain types of content went forward, they're actually trying to tell me that the times that I've been blocked off of my pages, blocked out of my groups, shadow blocked out of posting, that I hit some kind of algorithm that caught me saying something either hateful or off color, or just wasn't acutely tuned to what I was supposed to be portraying out there in Zuck's little world. Well, you know what? Fuck Zuck. I don't give a shit about Zuck. But anyway, I made a promise to you guys, and I know I don't have a lot of followers anymore, and frankly, I don't care. This podcast is going to go on with you or without you, and if you want to watch it, you're more than welcome. If you want to comment, I love your comments. I mean, I don't have a problem debating with anybody, and but this podcast is going forward. As soon as number 16 hits, I'm going to be well versed in what I have to say. My speech is going to get better. This podcast is going to get better. The sound's going to get better, and the video is going to get better. And I'm going forward. And I'm not going to be on Facebook anymore. I'll be using a hosting site like Libsyn or Podbean or something like that to be able to get my podcast out on iOS and Google Play and Stitcher and other outlets like that. You might see a post boost from me every once in a while, but basically I'm just going to have a fan page there. And if I have any fans, great. You guys can go in there. I'll have a moderator for it. And if I don't have any fans, then that's great too, because I really, like I said, not boohoo, woe is me. I don't have any followers. But you know what? A lot of you don't follow me anymore because of the way my politics line. And I'm sorry that my politics don't line up with yours. And I don't agree with a lot of stuff that's happening. But I stand with you too. And let me tell you something. I would be the first one in line in front of you, in front of Zuck, to stand up for your rights to say what you want to say. And the first one to stand up for your rights to let you do what you want to do. And I don't feel that from some of the people that I've associated myself with. And I tell you what, it's a disheartening feeling, but it's also one that I can get over because, you know what, I've had a life of diversity a life of adversity all my life. So, it's water off my duck's back, and that's just what I want to say. So with that said, that's kind of the breaking news portion of the podcast today, and I've got an agenda that I want to stick to and I want to go by today. So we're going to go forward with what we have. So I had a couple things in line today that I wanted to do, and one of them was stick to what I had going on. And excuse me, I'm scrolling through my agenda today, and so everybody knows me on Facebook. All my friends know me. They do know that I'm a libertarian, but I'm a libertarian that is. Let me see. What can I say? I'm a libertarian that leans more conservative than liberal, but I do have liberal qualities to me. I'm not gonna deny that I probably was a full-fledged liberal Democrat when I was younger, and I think everybody is. I think everybody starts out as believing what you learn in school. And I went to the public school system back in the 60s and the 70s, and they taught you all about government, the 3 R's, the reading, writing, and arithmetic, and you start out with this life, and I think, like I said, you think that democratic values, that the government takes care of you and you pay taxes, and that's the way it is. And as you get older and you get into this life and you start making money and you start having a career and you start having kids and you start having this and that, then I think gradually your values become more conservative, and they have to become conservative because you become aware of that you have to have money and you have to have certain successes and stuff to survive in this world. And there's some of you out there that have never grown up and you're just going to be progressive liberals all your life. That's fine. I don't care. I've got these people in my life. I love them. They might not love me. Like I said, I don't really care if you love me or not. It doesn't matter. My demographic is those people that want to listen. But I've grown conservative over my years. I'm 58 now, and I've seen a lot of this life go by, and I've blamed a lot of people for a lot of things that happened to me, and that was wrong, because everything that I've ever experienced in life or learned or anything like that have been from my own failures and from my own successes. And I do have people to thank for some of my successes, and I do have people to rail against that did me wrong, but they absolutely, it was my choice to let that wrongdoing turn me in a direction that I didn't want to go because it was totally a choice. So with that said, I got Jason Stapleton. He does a piece, and he was kind enough to let me go ahead and download his content. And you know, I always check with people. I'm going to be using some of this show to give you clips and things like that of content from other podcasts, because frankly, I think that there's some podcasts out there that everybody should listen to, especially if you're kind of trying to find your way through this political climate or social climate, because it's very important that we all get on the same page. And let me expound on that just a little bit as far as being on the same page. I want to make something perfectly clear to you guys. I have some dear friends out there since I've moved to Gilroy, and my social media presence has been greatly increased since I've been to Gilroy. I didn't have a social media presence back when I was living in San Jose. Basically, social media didn't mean anything to me, but then I got caught into it back when I got into Gilroy, once I started becoming a musician again and having this aspiration to be a producer, audio and video content. So I entered a group of people that are very politically driven. They have values that are different than mine, and that's fine. I'm fine with them. I've learned to grow and accept these people in my heart and in my home, and we break bread together, and we do all kinds of these things together, and sometimes we're invited and sometimes we're not. It's just, that's the way things go. It's an everyday life like I had in San Jose. Just I understand now the kind of positions that some people have, and I'm thankful for it. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew that some of these guys are Democrats and some of these people are Republicans. Some of them are Libertarians and they don't know it. But I wanted to say something about that whole thing with everything that's going on with the division that is being brought forth by, whether it be social media, whether it be news, whether it be the media, whether it be anything involved outside of politics, whatever. I mean, we all, when I talk to pure Democrats and when I talk to pure Republicans, we all have things in common. We really do. I mean, there's not much of a divide amongst us. We agree that, you know, government needs to be accountable for the money. Now, whether that money gets spent there or spent here, there's the difference that we have. But we all want these certain things to happen. We want our government to represent us. We want our health care. We want our food to be pure and good. And, you know, I understand all those things. So when it comes to this divide that I always talk about and I post about on my Facebook, it's this divide that we're having because I think we're being pulled apart by the outer fringes of both those movements, whether it be conservative or the progressive movement. And a lot of these people like Antifa, and a lot of these people like the KKK or the alt-right or the white nationalists or Black Lives Matter or whatever. I think these radical, or let me take that back, I digress, sometimes radical factions of these groups take us and divide us, or perceived division. And I want to say perceived division because I rail a lot about it. And I just wanted to let you guys know that, you know what, I'm with you. I mean, yeah, I'm a libertarian. I swing both ways, and but I'm more conservative about it. I mean, you know, I love my God. I love my family. You know what, Democrats, the same way. I'm sorry. Like I said, I digress again. I just seem to feel that I'm on the more conservative side, and I think sometimes that's held against me, and that's too bad. I just have a different way of thinking than some of my friends, and I want to apologize, number one, because sometimes I can be very brash and I can be very in your face, but at the same token, I want to make sure that you guys know too that, you know, you guys can get a little out of hand with some of the rhetoric. So I'm not going to tone it down. I don't expect you to tone it down, but I wanted to let you know that, we do share values, and I'm not out there to change the mind of that cement-footed Democrat, and I'm not out to change the mind of the cement-footed Republican, because you guys already made your minds up of how you want to vote. I mean, some people are going to vote straight Democrat, and some people are going to vote straight Republican. As for me, I'm not going to sway with the wind, but I could go in there and I could vote Democrat, or I could vote Republican, or I could vote straight Libertarian. I mean, basically, right now I'm leaning towards getting my party and the independent groups that want to make a third, fourth, or fifth party viable in the political arena of the United States, and that's what I want to do. So more likely than not, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to search down the independent, the Libertarians, the Greens, and parties like that. I'm going to take a serious look at their candidates, and more than likely I'm going to vote that way. And you might say that I'm throwing away my vote, but you know what? That's my freedom that I get, okay? The freedom that I want to have, and I would never, ever, ever tell you how to vote, and I expect that you would never, ever, ever take my advice on how to vote. But I do want to interject my opinion. I want to interject my debate, and that's kind of where we're at. So, like I said, Jason Stapleton has allowed me to take a snippet out of his podcast, and I wanted to let you know that that as we talk about more libertarian things in this podcast, that I wanted to make sure that you knew exactly what a libertarian was, and I think Jason says it better than anybody. And I just wanted to share that with you. And so if you give me about 15 minutes of your time, we're going to run through that snippet, and I will be right back.
They are the 5 basic principles that make up really more or less my life philosophy about how we treat each other and how we should treat ourselves. Those 5 principles are limited government, individualism, peace, tolerance, and free markets. I think that those are the most important factors when it comes to your success, our success as a collective, because we're a group of people all interacting with one another. We are, in a sense, a collective. We're a collective in terms of our family unit. We're a collective in terms of our cities and states, our country. There are a lot of different wants and desires, a lot of different opinions about how we ought to be living our lives and what we ought to be doing and how we ought to be what we ought to be pursuing and how. And it's just always been my particular opinion that when you allow men and women to pursue their own self-interest with a couple of very simple rules, that what you end up doing is creating more wealth and more opportunity for more people than any other system ever devised by man. Now, if you want to know what I think the rules should be, it's pretty simple. As a core belief, we shouldn't hurt people and we shouldn't take their stuff. And if you can agree with those 2 principles, then you're going to really like this show. Now, if you don't, if you think, hey, theft is fine under certain conditions and it's okay for me to take what isn't mine as long as I do something good with it or some other such nonsense, then this is not going to be the show for you. And you are not going to enjoy it at all. In fact, you're going to probably be screaming into your headset by the time this show is over. But my hope is that most of you, and I think most people on the planet, can agree as a fundamental rule that we shouldn't hurt each other, meaning we shouldn't aggress against someone else, and that we shouldn't take their stuff. Now, what does it mean when I say aggress? So we shouldn't hurt each other. Now, that does not mean that we should all be pacifists, because if you know anything about me, you know that I am anything but a pacifist. As a matter of fact, I don't mind I don't mind getting into the weeds with people at certain times when necessary. The difference between a pacifist who says I should always choose nonviolence over violence and someone who says I'm fine with violence, I just don't like aggression, is simply this. Aggression is me acting out in violence first. That's aggression. Me aggressing against you is me using physical violence against you for no reason or because I'm angry. I'm trying to motivate you to do what I want you to do, and I'm going to use force to compel you to act against your will. That's aggression. Okay? That is wholly and completely different than someone who is being aggressed against, someone who is having force or violence used against them and defending themselves against that violence. Okay, that is something completely different. It's something that we're fine with as libertarians, as people who believe in the 5 principles. And so it's important that you know that you don't have to be a pacifist to believe in these principles, and you don't have to be someone who just sits back and is nice in the face of massive adversity. That's not necessary either. In business, when we talk about we shouldn't hurt people and we shouldn't take their stuff, on the not taking side, that doesn't, of course, mean that we shouldn't ever compete, because competition is important. Cooperation and competition are both important in a free market, and you should be free to compete or cooperate with whomever you choose, whenever you choose, to be in competition one day and cooperating the next, and vice versa. So I love these principles, because when you think about it, government is limited for one reason and one reason only, because government tends to be force. Government is, as its very nature, force. And although in a society where people will undoubtedly be human, there are going to be times when you need someone to act in order to right a wrong. And whoever has the ability to do that in a free society is, for lack of a better term, a government, a state. And you can get into nuances about it and have philosophical discussions about it, but at the end of the day, somebody has to be able to enforce the law. And whoever we decide is going to be the group or series of people or different groups that enforce the law, they have a power that we have given them to use force against others, to compel them to act against their will. And we say to these people, you can only do this after it has been proven that the individual you seek to use force on has already violated someone else's right to life, liberty, or property. They've already committed a crime under the law. Under the very simple set of principles that we've laid out, this person has committed a crime, a wrong has been made, a judgment has been rendered, and now action must be taken to compel this person to do the right thing. Now, unfortunately, whoever we choose to fill that role has the power of the state, has the power of government. And since this is such a incredible burden for any human being or group of human beings to bear, because government is at its very nature force, the use of force, keeping government limited is very important to a free society. Can we agree on that? Now, whether you happen to be one who believes that there should be, that our Constitution is great, or whether you're someone who believes that, we shouldn't have anybody at all using any kind of force, one of the things that we can all agree on is the less force is used, the better. The less we employ the force of government, the better things tend to work. The less government is involved in our day-to-day lives, the better off we all are. That's the idea of limited government. Individualism. We haven't talked about these principles in a long time, and I think it's valuable to discuss them. So we talk about individualism. What do we mean? Quite simply, individual just means that we value the individual over the collective. That is, that the rights, property rights that we understand today, as we understand them today, start with the right of self-ownership. You own yourself. You own your body. What's the alternative to that? Well, the alternative is somebody else owns your body, somebody else owns you, and you are, in a sense, a slave. We reject this as people who believe in the 5 principles, and we say no. At our core, we believe in individualism. We believe in the right of self-ownership. You own you. Now, what does this mean? This means no one can compel you to act against your will. No one. The exception to this, of course, being if you've already committed a crime or wronged someone else. But the right of self-ownership means, and individualism means, we put a very high value on individual liberty. Just because 51% of the people think it's a good idea for you to give 90% of your wealth to the government doesn't mean that they get to do it. You have a right to self-ownership. If you own yourself, you also own the byproduct of your labor, meaning the work that you do, whether you're making a chair for yourself that you're selling, or whether you're working for a company and trading your labor, your knowledge, your skills to someone else in exchange for a paycheck. You own yourself, and you own the byproduct of your labor, what you yourself produce. Pretty incredible, right? An interesting system, isn't it? Keeping government limited, focusing on the individual as the most important person. What's the next one? Limited government, individualism, peace. Peace above all else? No. Peace first. Always defaulting to peace. Always working to try and maintain peace and good relations with others. You'll hear me say a lot of times, where goods cross borders, armies do not. Meaning simply, when we have good relationships with our partners, even if we may disagree with them, even if we may hate them, the fact that we maintain a good relationship with them and maintain good trading relationships with them means the likelihood of war is minimal. Brilliant. We don't send our boys off to fight unless our very survival as a people is in jeopardy. Unless those 5 principles are in danger of being destroyed, do we ever ask someone else to go and fight? Peace. Limited government, individualism, peace. The next one's tolerance. What does it mean to be tolerant? Being tolerant means simply, I disagree vehemently with the way that you choose to live your life and the way you view the world, but as long as you do not ask me to change, as long as you do not instigate force against me, then you are free to live your life however you see fit. That's tolerance. Tolerance is disagreeing and yet being willing to allow the other person to live their life, as long as they allow you to live yours. Agreeing to disagree. In this day and age, a lot of people think tolerance is you have to realize and recognize my position, validate my opinion, agree with me, or you are not being tolerant. That's ridiculous. That's not tolerance. That's you conceding your own moral compass, your own values for someone else's. That's not tolerance. That's bending over. Again, tolerance is me believing what I believe and allowing you to believe what you believe, and both of us living in harmony together. You see how peace and tolerance go together. There's a reason they're together in the list, because they're very closely tied to one another. The last one's free markets. See, I happen to believe that capitalism is the greatest system ever devised by man. Not necessarily the greatest system that could ever be, not necessarily the best one available, just the best one we've ever figured out how to use. There has been no better system ever devised by man to create more wealth and more opportunity for more people than the free market capitalist system that we understand as we understand it today. I also understand, through the study of history, that the closer we move towards totalitarianism, the worse off everything gets for everybody. The more centralized the control, the more centralized the planning, the worse it is for everybody. The more free the system, the more open, the better. The wealthier people become. As we move our eyes towards liberty and away from tyranny, as we move to, the chaos of individualism and the pursuit of self-interest, and turn away from state-centralized control, we also move towards wealth and opportunity and away from poverty and sadness. See, the more government is involved with everything from setting interest rates to what it takes to get a home loan to who you can sell to and when, how you have to operate your business, the worse it is for everybody. I view it as removing rungs from the ladder of success. Every new regulation, every new tax, every new oversight, every new rule removes a rung out of the ladder of success, making it more difficult for people to climb that ladder. Free markets is critical for creating wealth and opportunity for people. It also comes with a great deal of risk. I was talking with Amy and Matt this morning, And I said one of the big problems. I'm making some investments in my company now that I have no idea whether or not they will end up producing fruit or not. But I said one of the mistakes that people make is that they fail to recognize that if you want to get somewhere, you've got to take some calculated risks. You have to make some investments. You have to be willing to go broke, to lose everything in some cases in order to achieve that end. I said, now, on the flip side of that, a lot of people decide they're going to take on the risk without understanding what the risks truly are. So they decide they want to be an entrepreneur. They see that as the road to wealth, and they understand that all the rules are set up to benefit the entrepreneur and the business owner, not the employee. And they say, boom, got to be an entrepreneur, got to be that business owner. And they just jump in. They say, I got my 401k, got my pension program. I'm just going to sell all that out and I'm going to go into business. And you say, well, what are you going to do? They're like, I don't know, but I got 8 months to figure it out. Okay, that's a bad idea. That's not where you want to go. That's taking risk when there's no way for you to quantify what that risk is. See, in order for you to make a lot of money, you have to have a skill, and you have to employ that skill in an area where it has a reasonable chance of being successful. That's the difference between winners and losers. Winners are able to understand and visualize where to put their efforts so that they will have a reasonable chance of turning into, bearing fruit, for example. Just like the farmer knows what type of soil is going to produce the best results for his crops, and he chooses which fields he buys or leases because of the fact that they will produce the highest yield or are likely to produce the highest yield. That guy tends to have better crops than somebody who just buys rocky old soil and tries to plant crops on it. Understanding where to plant your harvest is important. But you have to take the risk. You just have to. But when government gets involved, when we have a less free market that is dictated and where government or some other entity decides how and when and where and what, all of a sudden it makes it more difficult to decide where we're going to plant or harvest. The risks become greater and greater, and the chance of yield less and less. Eventually, only those who have a lot of capital, who have a massive risk tolerance, can actually get in and produce a harvest. So the freer we keep our economy, the freer we keep our markets, the better. And the less intrusive government. Again, it's tied right back to limited government. The more limited the government, the more opportunity, more wealth is created. So those are the 5 principles and fundamentally why we believe them.
All right, got kind of sidetracked there, and some of my audio is going flippy, but what I wanted to get back and say to you guys was, I think I am recording again, but I'm not sure. There we go. I am recording again. So that's my utopia. That's my vision. Differs from the Democrat side, differs from the Republican side, differs from the progressive side, differs from the conservative side, and I believe that these are the values that our forefathers wanted to set forth when they wrote the Bill of Rights, when they wrote the Constitution, and like I said, these things were taken for granted as, the ink on the Constitution, on the signatures of the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence weren't even dry yet before politicians were bastardizing this kind of institution that we wanted to have for our government. So we really haven't done anything in a quality type situation as far as being able to protect those liberties, and I think we need to get back to that. I think the closer that we get, the better. Now people ask me, well, Bruce, if you don't want taxes and you don't want this and you don't want that, how do you expect our society to survive? You know what? I don't know. That's up to me and you, right? Right? It's up to me and you. We got to vote those people that want to represent us in, and then we got to hold their feet to the fire. And I don't think we're holding their feet to the fire, and that's just my personal opinion. But you can see it every day. I mean, we got people that are just off the rails, and you can say that that's President Trump, or you can say that that's Maxine Waters, you can say that it's Chuck Schumer, you can say that it's Mitch McConnell, you can say that it's all kinds of people. I mean, there's a whole freaking swamp of freaking corrupt politicians out there, and we keep voting them in all the time. Well, Bruce, how about term limits? How about we vote in term limits? You have term limits already. Term limits are called the midterms. Term limits are called the general election. All I got to do is quit letting this money flow in, quit letting these guys promise you something and go back and renege on everything that they told you. They'll tell you the world to get elected, but once they're elected, they can care less about their constituents. All they want to know is, hey, if you've got a lot of money, yeah, I'll talk to you, but you don't have a lot of money or you don't have a heartwarming story, then we just don't want to hear from you. If it doesn't help their agenda out in November, they don't want to hear it. And that's the way our government goes. That's the way it flows. And it's unfortunate. It really is. It's a very unfortunate thing that we have going on here, and we need to change it. It has to change. If it doesn't change, we're freaking hosed. I mean, that's just basically where we're at, and I'm very adamant about that. So, so thanks for your time on that. And I wanted to get into a couple more things like the personal finance stuff, Halloween, and my favorite movies, and then I've already talked about. Well, we could talk more about the midterms and the local races, but I'm really not prepared for that. This Facebook thing kind of turned me for a loop. Some of my content wasn't prepared the way I wanted to, but hey, that's why I'm doing these 15 podcasts here today, and that's why I'm here to make sure that my sound is right, my speech is right, and things are right with the world. So let's get into personal finance. I mean, we talked about the last 2 or 3 shows. We've talked about the emergency fund, and I hope you took that to heart. And I hope those of you who don't have an emergency fund or listen to this podcast are thinking very seriously about if something comes up, are you going to be able to handle it? Do you have a dollar put away to make sure that dollar that just got ripped out of your hands yesterday is replaced? I mean, that's very important to me, and we're gonna expound on something that goes forward, and one of them is your budget. And I know that a lot of people out there don't have a budget. I mean, we live by our cards, we live by our credit cards, we live by our ATM, we live by our checkbook, we live by the seat of our pants every freaking day. We do, and the best thing that ever happened to me besides Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman was the fact that I got to learn from them exactly what it takes to make something like this happen. Something like this 12 years ago would have never happened if I didn't find them. And I would have never had the resources to buy this house. I would have never had the resources to buy the equipment I'm using to put on this podcast. I would have never had the resources to put my daughter through college, or help them out when I need to, or actually just run the charitable events that I do. And it's all attributed to these principles that I'm going to lay forward to you for personal finance. And this next one is the budget. And what you need to do with the budget is budgeting is pretty simple. I mean, budget 101 is, you put all your expenses together, you categorize them out, and you figure out how much you have to spend on A, B, and C. And if at the end Z keeps you with either no money or a deficit, which means you're living over your means, well, then you got to make a decision for yourself on what you need to do. Either you need to cut spending, which our government our government refuses to do, or you need to go get another job. So you need to go deliver pizzas, or you need to go mow some lawns, or you need to go do something to make sure that that deficit stays at zero, or you have a surplus. And that's what I'm running on now. But it took me a long time to start running on a surplus, believe me. And the surplus allows me to give, and it allows me to invest, and it allows me to do all kinds of things that I was never able to do before. So, honestly, guys, what I really need you to do, if you don't have a budget, sit down. If it's just you, that's fine. Sit down and go through that checkbook, go through that Quicken, go through that money program you got, go through whatever you have, go through your receipts and find out where your money is going. And I don't care where your money is going, really. I mean, just make sure you know where your money is going. And then find out whether you have a deficit at the end or whether you have a surplus at the end. If you have a surplus at the end, you're doing great. But that's not good enough. Not for me. Okay, because a budget lets me know that I'm not going to overexpend or overextend myself on certain items that might increase in expenses, or they might decrease in expenses. I mean, the economy ebbs and flows, and prices go up and down. Gas prices go up and down, and that's just one of those things you have to do. Now, if you're a couple and you are running on the assumption that, I have my money and you have your money, especially if you're married, I'm sorry, I believe in the fact that if you're both working, if you are both contributing to the finances into the family unit, both those monies are everybody's monies, and you need to pull that together. Yeah, and it's nice to have, it's important to have your money, and it's important, for your spouse to have her own play money. And I understand that totally. But that's all in the budget, okay? And I'm just a very true believer that you guys need to pull together and stuff like that. So what happens is when you get to this budget thing is that you have to sit down, excuse me, you have to sit down at the table, and you have to have a come to Jesus moment. And you have to sit across from each other, and this is not going to be easy. When me and Tracy sat down on our budget, we had some very heated talks, some very pointed advice that she laid on me, and she made me realize that I was actually the diva in the family. I was the one that was the high maintenance guy. And I am. She is very, very frugal with her money, and she puts a lot more away than I do. And but I've learned through her, and I'm able to do that. But we do have a budget. Do we fudge on our budget? When we first started out, no, we didn't fudge on our budget, because if we would have fudged on our budget, we would have never got out of debt, and we would have never been able to do what we needed to do to be where we're at today. So with that said, after we do have our budget going on, to tell you the truth, the first thing that I did with our budget is that we went through everything line by line and figured out what we were spending our money on. And then we decided whether we had a deficit or we had a surplus at the end. Now, I'm not going to divulge where ours was at, but it got us to where we are today. So that's the first thing that you need to do, and you need to be honest with yourself, and you need to do the crying, you need to do the laughing, you need to do the hard work, because if you can't get there, you're never going to get there. If you can't get these steps down, you're never going to get to where you're going to be financially free, and you're never going to have that sense of being able to have a real self-worth and real value to your life and real wealth to pass on to whoever needs your wealth, because when it really comes down to it, I now have a little bit of money that I can lay off to my children if I pass away. I have a little bit of money now that I can spread around the community and help them out when they're in need, to my friends and my family who need my support every once in a while, or anybody's support every once in a while. I'm able to do that now, and it makes me feel good, and it's something that I never was able to guarantee anybody before, and it's a good feeling. So Get on that table. We're going to go through this again next week. I'm going to tell you about the envelope system and how I use the envelope system. But consider the advice that I give you, and sit down with yourself, or sit down with your spouse, or sit down with your family who's ever involved in making your house run financially, and sit down and seriously look at what you are spending on a monthly basis, and find out whether you have a deficit or whether you have a surplus. And we'll go on from there with that next lesson next week. And so Halloween is coming around the corner, right? So man, I've been having a great time this last week. This is kind of one of my, next to Christmas, this is one of my favorite times of year, because there's some great movies out there that I love for Halloween. Now, my wife is a nut for Halloween. This is probably she loves to decorate the house. I mean, if next week I'll snap a couple pictures of the front of the house, and I'll show you what she does. She's pretty elaborate in the way that she used the webbing and the graveyard. Me and my son made a casket for her last week. It's pretty funny out there. So it's almost like an amusement park ride out there, but it's funny. She loves it and she enjoys it. And we can't wait for Halloween to start. And it's just a treasure trove of finally the network TV and the cable systems are getting to know that times a year mean that it's time for different movies to come out. And AMC and Sundance and IFC and all those have played right into Halloween, and they are having their gala events with doing the 31 days of Halloween and stuff like that. I love Frankenstein. All the old Frankenstein movies. I think I download them. I watch them every year. Young Frankenstein comes to mind. I love Gene Wilder, and I love Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks was a fantastic producer and director, and I love his shows. I'm not so much into the slasher movies. I mean, my daughter's into the slasher. Sometimes my daughter and my wife they won't admit it to themselves, but they are into the slasher movies. I catch them all the time watching the stuff, and it was a funny situation where I saw on Facebook there was a post that if you know Elf on a Shelf, that happens during Christmas. It's funny because I've got my niece of mine, Nina. They're all into Elf on the Shelf, and I know a lot of people are into Elf on the Shelf, so they get that little elf out and they put it on their mantle every year. But one of the funny things that I saw this Halloween was the doll in the hall. And if any of you know some of these older dolls, and I'm specifically talking about the Annabelle doll, pretty creepy. I mean, dolls are dolls. Girls have loved dolls forever, but I've always had this little kind of thing in the back of my mind going, oh, dolls are a little bit creepy. And the Annabelle doll, she's really creepy. And I actually caught my wife the other day. They have a movie called Annabelle. And I was talking about the doll in the hall, and they're going like, oh, no. And my daughter's just totally freaked out. She hates clowns, too. But she goes like, that Annabelle doll's creepy, Dad. Don't you ever bring one in. So they were talking about this movie and this show that they watched about Annabelle and the doll and this ghost movie that they had seen, and a ghost documentary that had Annabelle in it. And it was funny because as I was sleeping the other night, I flipped through the channels. I gotta have the TV on when I'm going to bed, and there was the movie Annabelle, and I'm all, Trace, come here, and she comes in. I'm going like, hey, here's the Annabelle movie, and she's like, oh no, I'm not watching that. So I turned it off. I just wanted to show her, and I went back to what I usually watch to make me fall asleep, and then out of the living room I hear, oh God, no, I'm not watching this. I'm turning this off. She comes running down the hallway. She goes like, that's one creepy movie. And I'm all like, oh, yeah? She goes like, yeah, I ain't watching that. Well, turns out the next morning that she had stayed out in the living room, and, yeah, she had watched all the Annabelle. And she told me about the whole movie the next morning. It's just funny. So, hey, it's Halloween. I love Halloween movies, and I just wanted to share that with you. And it was great, man. It was good. So, hey, I want to thank you guys for being here and listening to me. I've got a little bit of post production work to get this podcast on. I'm looking at my sound production board and going like, man, I made a lot of mistakes here. So I got a couple hours to spend on doing some post production work. But hey, this work doesn't come cheap. I mean, I don't get paid at all for doing any of this. This is kind of a hobby of mine, and I'm looking forward to get paid one of these days by advertisers and contributors and stuff like that. But right now, I would love to have your listener contributions, and I've got a page at Patreon. That's the Patreon website, Patreon, P-A-T-E-O-N, P-A-T-R-E-O-N, Patreon. You go there and you go to Bruce the Weathered Soul, you will go to my website. It's my Patreon website, and there you can contribute money on a monthly basis or a one-time basis to this podcast. And what it does is it keeps these things clean. It keeps these microphones nice and working. Yeah, it keeps my soundboard working. Keeps all those little incidentals that cost money, and enables me to bring you this podcast every week. I would love to have you donate. There's a $1, there's a $5, and there's a $10 tier there that are for listeners only. They have different values and exclusive rights for you to have if you choose to do so. But I would appreciate any money that you guys can throw at me. None of this money will go in my pocket. It will definitely go for anything that I need to keep this podcast going. And I also have some advertisement slots that I'm looking to fill. Right now, the Weather Soul podcast is produced, and it is brought to you by First Note Productions, but I will sell that right to any company out there that wants to be brought to you by. And if you want to give me $100 a month, and I will make sure that when I do my intro that your company is on the top of the list, I will read your ad copy. And at the end of the show, I will also make sure that they know that this show was brought to you by your company. I also have some mid-break advertisements at $50 a month. If you guys want to come in and advertise here during the breaks in between my segments, I will read your ad copy and shout out your company name. And I just would really appreciate if I can get some advertisements here before show number 16 so that I can come on and do my intro and say, hey, this is brought to you by your company. And like I said, I really appreciate you guys coming. I would promote my Facebook website, but I think I'll keep that until probably show number 16 because that's when the fan page will start becoming live, and then I'll be mostly off of it. My moderators will be kind of doing the rest of the work on that. And I was very serious about Facebook. I will be posting on there because I just personally I like posting on Facebook, and it just really bugs me from a business standpoint that I could lose money if they don't like my content. But anyway, hey, this is Bruce the Weather Soul, and this is the Weather Soul podcast, and it's brought to you by First Note Productions. And I want to wish you guys a great weekend, and I'm out.